You are listening to the Horse Radio Network, part of the Equine Network family.
Greetings, everyone. Coach Jen here, and thanks for tuning in to Horse Tip Daily, episode 1545. And I'm so thrilled to have back on Horse Tip Daily the folks from Purina Animal Nutrition. And this time I'm here with Dr. Karen Davison. She is Director of Equine Technical Solutions for Animal Nutrition. Welcome to the show, Dr. Karen.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
And my little notebook right here says we're talking about heat stress in horses. And as we record this, it is August. And boy, oh boy, is there some heat stress going on.
No doubt. I live in Texas, so heat stress is just a way of life here mostly year-round, particularly in the...
Oh my gosh, yes, in Florida as well, which is where I'm at. So let's start out with a basic question. What is heat stress? There's heat stress, there's heat stroke, there's, oh my gosh, I'm sweating to death. What is heat stress?
Yeah, well, in horses, the horse's body produces a lot of internal heat through processes like just internal heat of digestion, particularly of fibers. So hay and pasture, the digestion process builds internal heat. But then when you start working a horse and exercising muscle builds heat internally really quickly. And the horse is really good at dissipating that heat from evaporative cooling, from sweat, from the skin surface. But when the ambient temperature and the relative humidity combine to maybe overwhelm that ability to dissipate that heat very effectively, that's when you begin to build up heat and cause that heat stress. And then heat stroke is just a further, I guess, a more extreme version of that. If you continue that process and you get that horse really overheated, that can lead to heat stroke. What
does heat stress look like to your horse owner? What am I going to see?
Yeah, well, a horse that is under heat stress is going to sweat sometimes more, sometimes less. If you're in Florida, you know those horses sometimes become overwhelmed and begin to actually stop sweating. And that's a whole nother level. Dealing with anhidrosis or non-sweaters gets to be a real challenge. So again, sweating is the way the horse typically cools themselves and regulates body temperature and prevents them from overheating. But if the heat stress is significant, you'll begin to see things like muscle weakness. They'll stumble. They'll breathe really rapidly. They'll start even what we consider panting. And if you check their heart rate, you'll see that their heart rate is going up, and they're doing everything they can to promote cooling. But, a little equation that's out there that horse owners really should be aware of if you live anywhere where there is potential for heat stress is you add the ambient temperature in degrees Fahrenheit to the relative humidity. And when you get that equation, if it's over 150 or if it's around that 150 range, you have to be really concerned. So, 98 degrees Fahrenheit and 70% humidity, you need to be paying attention.
So if you notice these symptoms in your horse, his breathing is rapid and shallow, and let's prerequisite this part of the show with you should have memorized your horse's normal vital signs. And if you haven't, write them down on a really big dry erase board somewhere. He's panting. In other words, his breathing is shallow, but very, very rapid. And he's sweating like gangbusters, or even worse, not sweating like gangbusters. If you're sweating like gangbusters and your horse is dry, that's a bad sign. What, as horse owners, should we be doing? How can we help alleviate these symptoms before they become a vet call?
Yeah, you can, if you were concerned, a quick rectal temperature would be good to take, again, knowing your horse is normal, which should range probably between 99 and 100 degrees. If they start working, it can easily raise to 102 to 104 degrees Fahrenheit. That same horse doing that same work, when it gets hot and humid, the body temperature can really quickly get to 106, 107. So if, basically the rule of thumb is that if the body temperature is 104 degrees or higher for any extended period of time, that can be life-threatening. So for me, if I'm riding a horse and he's not cooling off normally, water hose is your friend, ice bucket's your friend, rectal temperature, and then if they're not cooling down and getting back within, under 104 degrees, then I would be calling my veterinarian.
So back in the day, and I'm going to show my age to everybody, back in the day, you daresn't put cold water on a horse, especially if they had been working. Is the current wisdom that it's okay to put cold water on horses?
Yeah. And, I'm a nutritionist. I'm not a veterinarian. I can give you some ideas as a horse owner, but I would encourage your listeners to double check everything with their veterinarian always. But I'm the same as you. We were always told, don't give a hot horse water and don't run water on them. And what I think we've learned over time is that they do need water. You don't need to keep a horse that is hot and it's sweated a lot. Dehydration is a problem. And so offering them water, not drinking 2 full buckets of ice water in one drinking, but continuing to let them drink and rehydrate is important. And then, their best way of cooling is with their circulation next to the skin. And that's, we typically start from the ground up and get, their legs wet and run a lot of water on those legs where those large blood vessels are really exposed. And then, down underneath their neck. And a lot of people do, there's people who are way better at this than me. Boy, the endurance racers, they know all these things, but, ice water sponge on the forehead, things like that. But again, if you're maybe a little more novice horse owner, I would get a good protocol from your veterinarian that says, if I worry, if my horse gets hot and I can't get him cooled down, what should I do?
That's a very good point, because your veterinarian knows you, your veterinarian knows your horse, and they know what kind of living conditions locally that you're in. It's a great conversation. You're going to have your vet out for annual vaccines, or you're going to take your horse to the vet clinic for their annual vaccines. A couple of times a year, you see your vet, and that's a great time to do a quick quiz. Oh, by the way, if we have a heat stress issue, what are the 3 things I need to do first, and at what point should I be calling you? And you mentioned that one of the ingredients in dealing with heat stress is making sure the horse has water and that he is appropriately hydrated. Are there things we can do before the heat stress has the chance of occurring to help alleviate the chances of it happening as far as hydration are concerned? And then once it does, are there things that we can be giving our horse as far as hydration is concerned that can help keep our horses from falling into that, oh my gosh, it's time to call the vet area?
Yeah, super good questions. And so a couple of things. One is your comments about veterinarian and the exams. And, as a horse owner, to me, one of the best tools is knowing what is normal for each of my horses. So spending enough time with my horse, with my veterinarian, so I know each different horse, what is normal for them. Because anytime anything is not normal, you need to be paying attention. But the thing with the water intake is really they should be drinking water well. And subclinical dehydration leads to things like muscle weakness. But one of the first signs if a horse is slightly dehydrated is they do tend to back off feed. And so if it's hot and humid and your horse isn't eating well, I would really be checking and monitoring their water intake. But they should be eating, just a normal horse should be drinking 8 to 10 gallons of water a day. And even without any added exercise or stress on them, exercise, lactation is another big stress on their water balance. But just elevated ambient temperatures and humidity can double the need for the water without the exercise or the lactation added stress. So horses should be drinking water. And if they're not, that's a problem. Things you can do to make sure and ensure they drink water is to keep salt and water are your friend, and they're the best preventatives for heat stress, to have a horse really hydrated and having their electrolyte balance well maintained. And just in a lot of cases, just straight plain salt. But a lot of horse owners try that with a salt block. And while free choice salt blocks are great, when the temperature's hot and it's humid and horses are sweating a lot, most horses won't eat enough of the salt block to meet their salt needs. So we recommend at least, a tablespoon or two. It's not particularly specific, but a tablespoon or two of loose salt. Or if they're sweating a lot, a full complement of electrolytes is helpful. It keeps their electrolyte balance adequate, and it also encourages water intake, so keeps horses hydrated. And all that's before they ever get to the heat stress. So you don't want to give electrolytes to a heat-stressed, dehydrated horse. That's why veterinarians, you'll always see they'll give electrolytes and fluid together, because you don't want to give electrolytes after the heat stress has happened without the additional hydration. So one of the tools we have at Purina that I have become really reliant on is the Replenimash. It's a product that a pound of Replenimash mixed with as much water as you want or that your horse likes, and it provides a full complement of electrolytes, and horses love it. And if you go somewhere, if you travel and your horse doesn't like the water, or they're a little stressed and they're not drinking water well, we have great feedback from horse owners and myself who use Replenimash a lot. A lot of times, a lot of us use it when we're cooling a horse down after we've exercised. They drink some Replenimash and then they drink more water that afternoon as well. So anything you can do to keep hydration in the horse is a good thing.
Now, that's interesting that you brought up the Replenimash. I have used Replenimash, and I do a spot of endurance on the side when I can manage to do it. And I love being able to add as much water as I want, because I have gotten to the point now that it's 80% water, 20% Replenimash. So he's getting all that liquid, and the electrolyte balance in the Replenimash actually encourages more drinking. So he drinks some water because he's drinking his Replenimash. His is more like soup. But B, he will then consume more water later in the day, having consumed that. I like it better than just putting electrolytes in a bucket of water, because he might drink some, he might drink a lot, he might drink a little. It's just water from his point of view. But the Replenimash, it's like giving him a little smoothie. It's got good stuff in it, but then it encourages more drinking. So it's a win-win.
Yeah, you're right. The really cool thing is one is putting electrolytes in the water can be a little bit of a challenge, because the point is the horse may not be drinking water well anyway. So that's a little bit like, whoops, that might not help. 1 pound of Replenimash has a full complement, full electrolyte to replace 30 minutes straight of sweating. And that's a lot. And for a horse to be working hard enough to be sweating hard for 30 minutes. So it's a really good daily electrolyte. But we have a lot of people, and it has the additional benefit of supporting their stomach comfort, because it has the Outlast gastric support in that 1 pound serving as well. So 1 pound of Replenimash, as wet as you can make it, is a really cool thing. And the interesting thing, the reason electrolytes are so important in horses is, all of your listeners sometime have probably heard the old saying, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make him drink, right? Well, the reason that is when people exercise and sweat, it causes a thirst response because the electrolyte levels in their blood concentrate. Whereas in horses, when they sweat, they sweat differently than humans, and the concentration of electrolytes in their blood actually don't concentrate like they do in people.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. You have to actually feed the additional electrolytes so that you get that level of electrolytes circulating in their blood high enough to trigger that thirst mechanism to make them want to drink. So that's why you have that, some of those old wives' tales have some actually science basis in them.
Wow. Every time you guys come on from Purina, I have a light bulb moment. It's awesome. Thank you very much, Dr. Karen, for coming by. Now, for folks who want to learn more about this topic, where can they go on the web?
They can always go to purinamills.com. We have a lot of great information, including information on Replenimash and helping horses stay hydrated and managing heat stress.
Well, there you have it. Horse Radio Network has thousands of engaging podcasts for horse people, and you can have them sent right to your phone. Just subscribe via your favorite podcast player. This is Coach Jen, and I will be back again soon with another tip. Until then, go ride your horse. The Horse Radio Network and the Horse Radio Network hosts are not responsible for statements made by guests on the Horse Tip Daily. Please use your own judgment when listening to the tips on this show.